Peace be upon you, friends. With you is your friend Darum. I ask you to support the channel by subscribing, liking, and posting motivating comments and an enjoyable viewing experience for you. The books that I read in Amar's library were not all about magic. They included books that talked about sciences that cannot be classified as medicine, religion, or something familiar to us. But they contained sciences that I personally call the science of the ancients, which are extinct sciences that were practiced by previous nations and civilizations. And among those sciences there were sciences to treat body ailments, and most of them were simple, not complicated or expensive, and did not require talismans or anything forbidden by law. For example, when I began to recall some of these sciences, I found that most of them advised abstaining from eating a certain type of food for a period, and continuing to eat another food for a certain period of time to treat the illness. Like my current illness, some may say, was your illness known at that time? The answer is that these sciences do not treat specific diseases as much as correcting bodies as a whole, restoring their balance, and letting the body correct itself on its own, such as formatting a computer when you do not know the problem causing its malfunctioning. There are many troubles around us that we deal with every day, unaware of the harm they cause to us. I had the disease in the nerve of my left eye, and my vision blurred with effort and heat. If I took a hot bath or walked in the sun for a long time, the vision from that eye became almost non-existent. But after I applied this diet for a full month, the progression of the disease stopped, and I felt a very big difference, and I began to see better at that time. Years after the injury, I no longer suffer from anything, thank God. I later learned that the treatment or injections that were prescribed to me had been withdrawn from the market and were proven to cause significant harm, and that modern treatments for my disease had included diets very close to the diet I followed. What's the meaning of this? Does this mean that modern medicine is a failure? Not at all, but it is certainly not the pinnacle of human achievement with regard to treating this disease in particular, and many other diseases. This is my own opinion, and I do not commit it to anyone. A simple look at the civilization of the pharaohs, and we will know that they achieved many scientific achievements that we stand helpless in today. The closest example of this is the science of mummification. In the present era, we cannot keep bodies mummified for a long period of time like what the pharaohs did in the past. There are vanished sciences that have surpassed what we have reached in our present time, and some of which we may never reach. God Almighty said, "And they ask you about the Spirit. Say, the Spirit is a matter of the command of my Lord, and you have not been given of knowledge, except a little." Al-Israel 85. The knowledge of the Spirit, or what? Related to it is the spirituality of a science that has been distorted, excluded, and attributed on many occasions to magic and sorcery, of which he is innocent. Ignorance is our first enemy, because we are enemies of what we do not know. I believe that I gained something from that knowledge, or the knowledge of the ancients, during my research among Amar's books, without intending to mix it with the corrupted sciences of magic and talismans that I abandoned. Useless knowledge. I must talk about an important phase that I went through after my return from the Atlas Mountains, specifically during the period that I called normal life. It was indeed normal, but it included some situations with those who came into contact with me and who communicated with me during that period, and they were only my family and friends. Mostly my friends. As I mentioned before, a large part of my day was spent with them, and we used to meet on a farm owned by one of them, and this undoubtedly exposed me to many confusing situations. Especially with my new mind, science, and psychology, After I decided not to return to the talisman, the physical events around me, including sounds and sightings, began to decrease significantly, but they didn't disappear completely. I doubted from time to time about the reality of what I saw in this past, and what I saw from time to time, as my aura was still active. But who knows? Perhaps you suffered from a sleep disorder, or another psychological or neurological illness. To this degree, I doubted myself and the years I spent with the devils after Amar's murder. Although returning to normal life was easy physically, it was more difficult than I thought psychologically. I had to ignore and deny a large part of the past in order to live in peace in the present and the future. But of course, what the past is best at is chasing us no matter how hard we try to escape from it. I started visiting the farm 2 weeks after my last return from the Atlas. The last time I visited them was less than a year ago, so the blame was not that great. I had been absent more than that in the past, and they had become somewhat accustomed to my absence. Nothing changed. My friends were the same. Their bodies changed a little. Most of them gained weight. All of them got married and had children. Other than that, they were the same people I had known for years. I will not go into more detail about them, but I will mention some of the situations I went through with them after my last return, randomly and without introduction, because if I mentioned them all, it would require another book. Various topics were brought up for discussion on our small farm. Topics included everything: sports, politics, marriage and divorce, cooking and food, art and artists. Everything goes on in any break. What was not normal was my contribution to those discussions, which was sometimes viewed as a joke on my part, even though I was not joking. I remember the first time I contributed my own opinion after my recent return, and that contribution was what broke a barrier that I had maintained as much as possible with my friends, as they were the only ones who continued to deal with me as I was before, fear. And that feeling was comfortable for me and was like returning to the beautiful past. Anyway, one of my friends was complaining about the problem of ants in his house, and he said that he had tried everything to get rid of them using pesticides and control companies, but they were increasing day after day, and his wife was very upset about the issue, and it reached the point where she asked him to sell the house and buy another house as a last resort to get rid of it. From that problem, this topic became the subject of a heated discussion for several days between a counselor and a Sainik. And everyone issued fatwas on solutions that our friend had tried to no avail. And I was the only one who did not suggest anything to him, because the solution that I was going to present to him would not have been accepted by anyone present. So I remained silent until someone asked me a question directly and said, "What do you think?" My opinion in what? Does Ahmed have a problem with ants? Believe me, you don't want to know my opinion. Ahmed, everyone had their say and I did not benefit from anything. Tell us your opinion. I don't have an opinion. I have a solution. Ahmed, with some optimism. Well, tell me. I am very tired of this problem. My solution will not please you. Ahmed, say it, and it has nothing to do with what I like. I am desperate and I will try anything. Talk to them. Ahmed, who am I talking to? With ants. The council exploded with laughter, except for Ahmed, who frowned at me and said, "Are you mocking me? I told you that you won't like the solution, but this is the best way to get rid of them." The rest of the people in the council started mocking Ahmed and trying to persuade him sarcastically to try my solution, which was ridiculous from their point of view. He became angry with them and rebuked them. However, I spoke to him in a serious tone and said to him, "Believe me, I am not mocking you. Try it. Most likely they will respond to you." Ahmed, shouting at me, "Try what?" I gave up trying to convince him, especially with the general atmosphere mocking him, and said, "Don't try anything." Frankly, I have not tried this method before, but I read in one of the books in the Amar library that ants are among the creatures that understand human speech and absorb it completely when they are addressed directly. Here I must emphasize again that the books I read in that library were not all about magic, and the talismans, there was a science. Or sciences that were not part of magic and were not part of religion. The knowledge of the ancients, which I spoke about above. I admit that at first I thought that they fell under the sciences of sorcery, but as the days passed, I saw no harm in them. I saw nothing else. Benefit. Ooh. Of course, these words cannot be said in public and in front of people. Otherwise, I would have found myself, at the very least, crucified. As I mentioned previously, the Zoroastrian, those sciences, part of which I learned, were not magic, and did not include any seeking help or closeness to Satan or anyone else. Oh, you heard? It was just a huge legacy of unspoken, unproven, or unreported science and information. Even I was not sure of its authenticity because I had only read it and had not tried it before. I was preoccupied with those hieroglyphs and did not pay any attention to that secondary knowledge. However, after I left that world with the intention of not returning, this knowledge floated to the surface of my mind, and I began to look into it carefully and try it little by little with those who were around me. One of my first experiences was with my friend, Ahmed, and the Ansar tribe that invaded his house. Days passed since the ants discussion incident, and none of us raised the topic for a long time until one of my friends raised it while we were gathered on the farm while he was playing cards with 3 others, and said to Ahmed, who was busy watching a football match, "By the way, Ahmed, how are the ants?" Ahmed was silent and did not respond, or even turn around, and continued to watch the match in silence. My friend asked him again while I was watching them with interest. Ahmed, coldly, without looking at him, "The problem is over." My friend laughed as he hit the playing card on the ground. "Really? How?" Ahmed turned to me while I was watching him, and our eyes met. And I knew at the time that he had tried the method I had suggested to him and that it had succeeded. But he did not declare it and said, "The important thing is that the problem is over." At the end of that day, after I left the farm gate and headed to the car, Ahmed followed me, and I kind of expected what he would say. Ahmed, "Oh, you were joking, right?" "Joking about what?" Ahmed, "Your stupid way of getting rid of the ants. They left because one of the pesticides affected and killed them." "They're right. Did you talk to them?" Ahmed, "No, I didn't talk to them." "Do you think I'm crazy?" "There is no problem if your question is meaningless," I said as I opened the car door. I got in the car and went home that day, thinking deeply about this new science that I had never used before, and had never really paid attention to. I wanted to clarify something before I resumed talking about what happened after that night, specifically about the conflict that took place inside me. What I am certain of is that I spent 3 years in the Amar library and read a huge number of books. This is beyond dispute, but when I recalled the first time I read a talisman out loud, it was to save my brother from Yaram by liberating Sharini, and the second time was from the book Git, the Testament. When I tied up Jassar and everything that preceded that, starting with the book that my relative gave me, was not talismans in the sense of hieroglyphs, but rather scattered lines, words, and truncated sentences. Dajan came and led me to Amar. Hey, what if everything that happened to me in the past was imagination, and illusions, because of the talisman I read to save my brother? That. Especially since he doesn't remember anything from that day when I raised the topic with him one time. No one alive who witnessed those events can confirm what I saw. I have knowledge from that library, and my aura was activated. I do not doubt this, but other than that, I do not know. At that period of my life, I tended to strongly doubt them. So I saw conflicts between the demon tribes and every entity I saw from that world. Jinn, Jassar, all of them. Is it possible that they were figments of my imagination? Why not? No one saw them but me. I didn't even see Salem's son after those events, and he could have been just crazy, and I believed him. And in any case, let us leave this point for the time being, because I loved sharing with you the psychological state I went through during that period. I returned home and decided to try to recall some of these sciences and write them down, but I faced difficulty in doing so, even though they often come to my mind automatically, depending on the situation, and recalling them is direct. I am easily present when I am asked or a situation requires a quick reaction from me. I realized this when I spoke to my mother while drinking tea one evening a few days after the ants incident. She was talking about the conditions of our family members as usual, which of them got married and which of them had children, and I listened to her with enjoyment because her voice on any topic she speaks makes me feel comfortable and reassured.